What's up, everyone? Welcome to L2R2 PlayStation Podcast. My name's Fonze. I'm joined by my co-host, indie game dev, my UK bro from another mum, Callum and Rowe. Callum, we've played The Last of Us. We're going to get into it. This is going to be a full spoilery episode, so I have a little warning that I'm putting up. I'm very nervous on how we want to get into it. I guess we can give our initial thoughts on how we felt, like a little blurb, and then we'll kind of pick apart everything further. But
cool.
Yeah, why don't you tell me, your overall impressions?
I think it's an incredible game. I think it's very impressive, and I loved playing it. I couldn't really put it down as soon as I started. I think the story has some problems. I think it definitely was a bit dragged out in certain areas, which I'm sure we'll go into later on. But I hated the way it ended. I absolutely hated the end with a passion. It just left me feeling so sour about the whole thing. It made me feel differently about the entire series. It was kind of like there was no payoff. There was no nice conclusion to sort of let me look back fondly on the series. Overall, I think it's a great game. I think it's really, really awesome. The gameplay is just a complete transformation of the first game. There were so many moments that I've never experienced in terms of gameplay in any other game. The entire game felt like a scripted set piece, which I think is just amazing. But yeah, that's my sort of overall thoughts, I suppose, and yeah, we'll definitely get deeper into those as it goes on. I imagine.
And I actually share a lot of those same feelings that you do with the overall game. Although it's funny, and I don't know how. There's a separate conversation or like argument for once you finish something and you kind of have time to dissect it, like, I guess, do we review like our feelings initially or like over time? And there hasn't been a bunch of time passed, but like I noticed that as I sat on it, I started to feel more and more different about it. And but it's just based on those initial thoughts. But like overall, yeah, I was super positive experiencing the game. I was blown away by the gameplay. The visuals are on another level. I was very, and I remember texting you, like I've never been so angry playing a game where, like, because of the change and like the character you play as, I almost didn't want to play anymore. I was so fucking frustrated and angry and upset over this fake thing. I just felt like story wise, they were doing something to these characters that I loved that I did not want to see. But I kept playing, and I actually did a 180, and I knew that they were. That's the thing. It's like I knew Naughty Dog could do that. I understand what they're setting up. I'm like, okay, I don't think you can pull this off, but all right, I trust you. And they did it, and I actually ended up positive on the ending, but as it was unfolding, I definitely had those same feelings that you had. Let's get into like the beginning, playing this game. How did you feel with how they structured that beginning?
I really liked the beginning. I think it was nice to see Jackson, like the community that had sort of built over the years. I loved the whole outpost thing. I liked how it sort of got you to like play through that. It sort of allowed you to get a feeling for how themselves, and I think that was really cool. I was straight away immersed into that community, and the new characters it introduced straight away I really liked, and I think the fact that they were all part of this community allowed them to again just be grounded straight away, and made them sort of instantly interesting. I liked it, and I knew as soon as you play as Abby the first time, I was like, there's going to be a little something going on here. I don't know why I'm playing as this person. I loved the intro. Obviously, I'd say that the beginning sort of caps off at Joel's death, so I won't go into that quite yet. I really liked it. What did you think?
Yeah, looking back, I love I I guess a comparison to like the first Last of Us game where you watch society fall apart as you play as Joel's daughter, and then eventually as Joel, you see society just like fall to shit in front of you. With Jackson in the second in Last of Us, it's very much like rebuilding of society. You're walking around, this town is flourishing, kids are playing in the street. I love how that was just such a stark, change in tone from those two games, and little stuff like when you do eventually go out with Dina. Before you do that, as Ellie, you have a snowball fight with these kids, and they're like introducing you to the mechanics in such a way that's like, I love how they did that, because you're going to use the same shooting mechanics, but rather than have you shoot something, they have you do something that's super fun and just like a happy moment playing with these kids, because it's going to be such a dark game. So I knew it's like, savor this moment, because there's going to be just like so much death and destruction.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
stuff like that, and how you walk around the town, and yeah, you really feel like it's lived in, and you already feel for the characters.
I love Jackson, and I'm kind of I mean, a lot of the sort of like times I'll say sort of I wish this happened, wish that happened. I don't say it's like a negative thing about the game, because I know it's just like my personal thing, but I would have liked to have seen more of Jackson. I would have liked to have had more time spent there. But that's just testament to how quickly I found myself interested in it, and like you said, they built a real sense of like live community around there, and especially when you like go into the bar and you speak to I can't remember his name now, the guy who insulted Ellie.
I forget his name too, but yeah.
But like just by like going in there, and you can sort of like I always found myself like just stopping and just watching like the animations like looping through, because they're so impressive. And in fact, I say looping through, I didn't actually see an animation loop once. It was always just, everything always seemed live and just completely real.
Yeah, that's another issue, or like a testament to the animation and how dynamic it is. I know one point to the very beginning, you start on a horse as Joel. Joel's having this conversation with Tommy, just explaining what the hell happened at the event with the fireflies. And as you're on the horse, sometimes you'll come under a branch that's like too low, and he'll kind of duck. It's just like so dynamic the way it happens and transitions. There's so many moments like that in the game where the characters just adjust, and you don't see that awkward. There are times, sure, where like I snap into something because I hit the button and I snap into cover or whatever. But the fact that they have so many options for the character to move that are just like on the fly is nuts.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think I think Jackson was a great start, and like you're saying then about Joel talking to Tommy about what happened at the end of the first game, I think it was a great start. It sort of straight away lets you know where you're at, where who Joel was told, how Tommy feels about it, and it's really cool, because if I remember correctly, that scene is literally just after the first game, isn't it? That's still that's just when Joel's returned to Jackson with Ellie, because Ellie's young in that bit, I think. But yeah, I thought it was a great intro, and it sort of set it up really, really well.
And it's also beautiful when you're on the horse and it's silent. You have your conversation. Then when you actually leave from that garage, you're just on the horse, and it's just this like sunset. You have the foliage, you have the grass. It's just so fucking beautiful. And I love how they're really masters at setting up a mood or like building to something, and how they just like will leave you alone with the scene, and that alone will build this kind of this feeling. It's pretty nuts, and I just loved how it was. If you go back and play the first Last of Us, or just think about the first Last of Us, that intro was so different because it's already starting off dark and eerie and foreboding, and this one is just more of just an opposite tone to that.
Yeah, definitely. But then the tone shifts quite dramatically, and with Joel's death, obviously. And I've seen a lot of fair criticism about that scene. But like, what did you think about it?
It was rough, man. It was really rough, especially since I guess I always knew something was going to happen with Joel. I know he wasn't going to come out of this clean and everything's going to be happy. I expected that. I guess what added to the frustration or anger was playing as Abby right before that, because once they start talking, once you play as Abby and she's talking with the other guy, you don't know them yet. they start to reference someone that they're looking for in Jackson, and you realize, okay, it's fucking Joel, and she's after him because justifiably so, but she's after him. And so playing as her right off the bat, I was just so angry because like I don't want to help her kill Joel in any way. So I know at the beginning I was like, hey, can I just like jump off this cliff and end it here so Joel lives? Like I don't want to deal with this. So I could tell it was already going that direction. And sure enough, yeah, you and it sucks so much because they help that whole group out, Joel and Tommy, and then for them to they just have no idea that they were looking for him.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I think it was. I mean, in terms of like how it was done, I think it was really good. Yeah, it was awful to watch. It was uncomfortable considering your relationship that's already started with Abby. Very uncomfortable. One of the very many uncomfortable moments in the game. But I think the way it was done was really good, and I think a lot of people have umbrage with the fact that Joel like so readily gives them his name and things like that. But I didn't really find it that unbelievable. I think with the circumstances of the storm that was happening, they needed shelter, the fact that they had saved her, and I mean, that just from like having to run away from all the infected and everything, I think that would probably bond you with somebody quite quickly, no matter what. So I think they'd probably feel quite friendly, and they're so near Jackson, like safety. So, but yeah, I think it was tough. It was really rough to watch. And when you're playing as Ellie just before, I love that bit. It reminds me a little bit of like that bit of gameplay at the end of the first one where you play as Ellie for like literally like 30 seconds and the game ends. It kind of reminded me of like that. Like there's no reason for you to even be playing that part because you don't actually fight anyone. You just walk into the house and then the cutscene plays. But it sort of lets you feel that desperation as you're trying to get to that house as quick as possible. Because I remember thinking, like I need to get there like as quick as I can. Like I need to find a way in and everything. And I think that was quite a really good idea to give the player control at that moment. And then you go down the stairs and obviously the cutscene plays. But and I noticed as well that when Ellie gets closer, she can hear Joel like screaming out, and you can see like her body language starts to change and everything. And yeah, it was a very powerful moment. And again, personally, I would have liked it not to have happened so early, but I've got no real problem with it happening, and I think it was done really well too.
I agree with that. I know some of the criticisms online I read after the fact were, I mean, the fact that he was killed the way he was, I think, and I had these same feelings watching it unfold in real time where I would have loved for this character that I adore to have some kind of like sacrificial moment where he's kind of like holding the door and zombies are coming in and he's like, you guys go. And then like some kind of like awesome moment. It's not that at all. He just gets taken out. But I think they needed to do that tone wise to give you the reason to go on this or to see why Ellie goes on this revenge mission. Because she watches him just get murdered in cold blood, like right in front of her in this just ruthless way. And they needed you, the player, to feel that too, so that we're on board with her going on her mission. As I was playing the game, there's a lot of comparisons with me to like to another revenge story, which is John Wick. Have you ever watched the John Wick movies?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, similar thing where his dog is killed, and it's just his only connection to his wife, and that sets off everything. Although different because that dog in John Wick is this pure character that didn't do anything and just like gets killed, and so you understand that all the terror, all the murder is somewhat justified, right? With The Last of Us 2, Joel is a bad guy. I mean, you can debate his intentions, all that kind of stuff, what he did it for, but he murders a bunch of people. He saves Ellie, and maybe for selfish reasons, I understand, like it's debatable, but he's sort of a bad guy. So when he gets killed, it's not the same like way where you can just get revenge for revenge's sake. He also comes with his own baggage, and he kind of brought on what got him killed in the first place. So it's tough, and I think you see that with him. The way he kind of lets it happen is that he knows that he's reaping what he sowed. Like he knows that he owes his life basically for all the stuff he's done.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there's definitely a complexity to Joel and to the whole moral compass in The Last of Us' world. So I think it was sort of, I suppose, getting a bit further on, how it eventually puts you in the role of Abby and tries to get you to sympathise with her. I think it was a clever hook to use to sort of try and make, again, just invoke emotion from you, explore this sort of moral grayness to the game. And I think in that respect, it's great. I think it's a good continuation of the game, because the first game was all about that as well. You know, the ending of the first Last of Us, you were unsure whether Joel was even a good guy or not because of what he did. So I think that same moral confliction is still the theme in the second game, which I think is good to have.
Yeah, it's funny to take a step out of this. Notice how our first reaction is to talk and dissect the story, and that's something with The Last of Us where they're almost created their own lane. Like it's a different. It's not just a game. It's this thing that kind of transcends that, because the story is so prominent. It's almost like its own genre. I mean, the gameplay, of course, it's top notch. It's amazing. The graphics are amazing, but the first reaction is to try and pick apart and understand that story. And they've done such a good job with making you feel so much, anger and hate and happiness, and just these such a wide ranging extreme emotions. And that's what I love about The Last of Us, is that I come to it to feel this way. And sometimes those feelings were not good or happy or I agreed with them, but they made me feel like that was the whole point. So no, it's just like, it's funny that that's our first reaction, because it's such a strong story.
Well, yeah, I think the two are so removed from each other as well, and I think that's where a lot of people have problems with the game, is because I think where a lot of the way the writers talk about the story as well, not being fun or anything, and a lot of the themes in the story, they don't really translate that well into the gameplay, I find sometimes, because the gameplay is really fun. It's super fun. So there is a kind of weird contradiction that you can find quite easily by comparing them together. So I think it's important to dissect them as two. I think to talk about the story as one, how that affects you, and then talk about how you felt the gameplay experience was as well. But yeah, you're right. It is testament to no matter how you feel about the writing. I think as much as I as we'll get into a little bit more later on, as much as I disagree with some of the story things, I can't fault the writing. I think the writing was great. I think the characters were great. I think the dialogue was great. I can't really fault it that much from that respect. There's just certain things I disagree with. But yeah, it is definitely testament to see how we're straight away wanting to talk about the story and how it's made us feel.
Yeah, and I mean, we can keep going with the story too. Like, after Joel's death, you do set out to get that revenge. How did you feel about the character of Dina and her relationship with Ellie? I feel like it really starts right before that, where they have their moments, which is an awesome moment, where they have it in that grow room where they're smoking weed, which is such a cool, like, I never would have expected to see that in The Last of Us for some reason. Even when she finds the bong and she's looking at it, I was laughing out loud. I was like, this is dope. And then they actually find that grow room. It's just nuts. And then they have their moment there, their sex scene basically in there. And it's like, I loved how they built that connection.
Yeah. I think the relationship between the two is really good. Dina as a character, I found her quite annoying sometimes. I found her quite like nonchalant, but not as in like she was poorly made or whatever. I think she was a great character. I just found her quite annoying at times, but I think her relationship with Ellie was really good. I think they had great chemistry, and yeah, I really found myself caring about her sort of further on in the game as well. But yeah, I loved that bit, and I loved the journey that they have when they sort of get to Seattle, and the sort of more slow paced start when you're just starting to find out about the WLF, and that downtown bit in Seattle when you can explore around. I think it was, not to get into the gameplay X, I'm sure we can do that sort of separately, but I think it was really cool in terms of story, a way to explore, find these notes, find out what was going on, like in this place, and really like piecing together some things about these different factions that are all new to you 'cause you're in a new place, and yeah, there's a lot of dialogue between Dina and Ellie as you're walking through, like especially when you go to like the synagogue and things like that. And there's just a lot of natural storytelling, which I think the first game did really well as well.
Yeah, no, I think we can talk about gameplay with story because it does such a good job of merging those two. I mean, I felt like as you're having these fight scenes with the other characters and you, Adina, and Ellie, experiencing the fight that they go through, it builds those connections, the dialogue they have in between them. No, I think that they're actually like it's all linked together, but. Yeah, I really loved how there was another criticism way back when the trailer initially premiered. It made it seem like you were going to lose, not Abby, you're going to lose Dina as the main character that drives Ellie to go on her revenge mission. People were very angry that the fact that they were going to use this gay character basically to like invoke emotion in like in a weird way to kind of just like pull that character out from you, and it was like a gratuitous kind of way of doing it. That's not what they did. It was actually Joel that died. In fact, the opposite happens where when you're with that Abby, geez, I'm gonna lose these names a bunch. When you're with Dina, your connection is so strong. Like you guys are partners. You're depending on each other. You're saying thanks, babe, like all the time. Like they're just such a power force together, and it was such an opposite from what that initial trailer made it seem like.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, I didn't really watch the trailers that much. As you know, I was trying to like stay away from them. So I'm quite glad because now I hear like, I think that's fine. I think that's a cool like sort of red herring. But there's a couple of things like where they made it out that Joel was going to be in the game, and but then it's actually Jesse at that part, and I think that's where it's a little bit tone deaf. Is the way the game was marketed as an Ellie and Joel thing, and even like Neil Druckmann was even saying, this is an Ellie and Joel adventure, and he even said that when the HBO series was announced, he was like, "Oh, it has to be about Ellie and Joel because Last of Us is about Ellie and Joel," and I felt that to then do a complete 180 and have Joel killed straight away was a little bit tone deaf because people were expecting it. Not because that was just what they predicted, but that's what he told people they were going to get. And I think that was a little bit, like tone deaf, a little bit disrespectful to lead people on to think that it's going to be one thing and then give you something that's not only different, but is kind of detrimental to it being part two to the first game in the first place kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think like you were saying with the motives, though, with making it out that Dina dies, I think that's cool to have sort of these expectations subverted in that respect. But I think they were a bit too the writers were a bit too sort of trying to sell you the fact that this is going to be an Ellie and Joel game.
Yeah, I get that. I guess devil's advocate is because they play with time so much in the game, with having you play 3 days as Ellie, 3 days as Abby. There's also a lot of, which I thought was awesomely done, the way they insert these like flashbacks with you and Joel, with Ellie and Joel, and with Tommy. It's like there's a lot of those flashbacks that happen. So it's almost like if you were to put those chunks together, maybe there is more of a focus on Joel and Ellie, but it is spread out in these specific moments. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's not as much as we thought. I mean, Joel really, it doesn't have much of a presence. I thought, and once again, going to that initial trailer that they showed off, like one of the first ones where they show Joel kind of like as a ghost kind of come into play and talking to Ellie, asking her, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I thought that Joel was going to be this kind of in the back of her mind, kind of thing guiding her or questioning, like, "Hey, do you want to do this? You're losing your humanity," that kind of thing. And he wasn't. But I just kind of had that. I just imagined that in my mind. That's where we're going to go with it, and he wasn't at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so I suppose we, because I mean, in terms of story, I don't think there's a huge amount more to talk about with Ellie's like first 3 days in Seattle, because I think the thing is that a lot of the things Ellie does, so for example, when she like kills Owen and Mel, and even when she kills that dog in the aquarium and all these things, they're not as much. They're really good, but they're not quite. They don't quite give you that emotional feel until you've played Abby's sort of part and you get an attachment to these characters that were otherwise irrelevant to you and to your emotions the first time through. But what did you think about sort of the end of Ellie's first part when you get back to the theatre and then Jesse obviously is killed and then it sort of stops there and then starts with Abby's thing?
Well, I mean, when they actually give me control again as Abby, I was very angry. It's so much so I was, my wife was there with me. It's like, I don't think I want to keep playing this. Like and I was almost like, I felt like they owed me something. It's like they ruined this game I've been so happy been waiting to play. And now like when I wake up, I have no interest or enthusiasm of playing this. At the same time, I knew they were doing it for a reason. And it was just hard to like separate that out of my mind because I knew there's a reason why they're doing this. They're going to somehow make me feel for this character. I have no idea how. I don't believe it, but I trusted it. Although, like right before then, I think there was some progression with Ellie right before that or during those 3 days, just in the fact that they show her kind of just how far her addiction is and how what she's willing to like sacrifice and give up. She doesn't really listen to Dina very much. She's willing to be really riskful in her pursuit of Abby, and also introduces the whole like love triangle with Jesse coming into play, and Dina. You find out Dina's pregnant, and they're together. So it's like, how is Jesse going to fit into it? I liked seeing that stuff unfold, and of course, when you end it with Jesse dying, it just like it hits hard. It's like it sucks, man. Like there's no way you can come back to this, and they can both parties can walk away.
Yeah. And again, it's testament to how it's written because these are all new characters, but we care about them already. So when Jesse died, you're straight away like hit with that sort of emotion because, like you said, you've been watching the escalation of the situation with, Dina being pregnant. Obviously, Jesse having to put up with the fact that Ellie's now with his ex-girlfriend, and so yeah, there's definitely a lot of complexities there, and I think those complexities do just make you care about those characters more because you kind of want to see it unfold. You kind of want everything to sort of work out. So when Jesse's killed so bluntly and so like out of the blue, it really does hit hard. And also the fact that like that scene happens just before you take control of Abby. It's even harder, and like you said, it takes a while to warm to it. I mean, it certainly took me a while, and I remember when it wasn't until I sort of realized that Abby had like an extensive upgrade list, and I was picking up new weapons, and I realized that Abby's got the same game mechanics that Ellie does. Well, I mean, they're slightly different, but she has the same like progression system, and that's when I was like, "Are you joking? Like, I've just played." All this is Ellie, like gotten really into her like weapons and things like that, and now I'm gonna have to play as this character who I really don't like. I mean, she's just killed Jesse. It looks like she's about to kill Tommy, and yeah, it was horrible. But like you said, I mean, I trusted Naughty Dog, I trusted the writers, and I trusted they knew what they were doing, and within a couple of hours, I really warmed to Abby, and I really enjoyed it. And I want to sort of like, I've got a lot to talk about with the gameplay, but I don't want to tangent off too much of the story. So, but I ended up enjoying Abby's parts in some ways a lot more than Ellie's parts. And yeah, I think they did such a good job of making me care about Abby, sympathizing with her, and sympathizing with the characters around her, like Owen and Mel, and Manny, and all these characters who I'd grown to hate because of the Joel scene, and Owen I actually found quite insufferable at first with Abby, but then I grew to really like him and understand his motives and everything. So yeah, they did. It is a stellar job in making you care about something you really shouldn't care about. But I do also have some problems with Abby's parts, and I think it was too long. Far too long, and I think there's so many obvious places they could have cut it down, like a lot of the scenes where you're in the aquarium just walking around, and like you were saying, the Ellie and Joel flashbacks were so good that they could have had so many more of them, because there was so many times of Abby where I was getting a little bit burnt out. I was a bit like, oh come on, like it was a bit of a slog at times. But all in all, I liked her part. What did you think, sort of? Because I know you saying that you started to like it, but what did you think of her, like the characters that she was with? And because like you're saying, you really cared for Jesse and Dina. Like, what did you think of Owen and Mel and Manny and all these characters that you knew were basically on the other side of of these other characters.
Yeah, I mean, I hated everybody from the get go. So it's like I was just burn
Yeah.
this place down. Like when you wake up at that stadium, it's like, okay, cool, burn this place down. I give two shits. And so even when they're showing her and her dad, and you realize like, oh, that's a scientist that you kill. Even then, I still didn't care. Just because I had it fresh on my mind. She kills Joel in the way that she does, and then like she shot Jesse. Like they're gonna have the interactions. Like I don't like her, I don't sympathize with her or her perspective, the people around her at all. It wasn't until later on, and I had that same moment too, where I realized like, oh, she has her own progression system. I'm gonna play as her as a while. That also set more like me into a depression. It's like I don't want to do this, man, but kept playing it, and I think I'm trying to pinpoint like the point where I was really kind of turning around for her. Maybe it was because you're right. Those beginning points with Abby where it's very slow. And so I definitely did not care about what they're telling me. The whole aquarium stuff, I could not care about it because I was still hot off the heels of feeling so negative towards her. So everything they showed me, I did not care. I think it was maybe not until the time you actually go through that stuff she goes through with the Seraphites, or with the, what do they call, they have another, the scars, where she's hung up. She gets through that. Those other scars help her. I forget the two characters' names. But going through that's really where I started to humanize with her more. And then seeing that whole journey she goes through to go back for, is it Lev? That whole arc really cements it. Like, okay, I'm actually invested in her. I get it. I haven't really even thought about how long it's been. Like, I'm now on Team Abby. And then you start to realize all the shit she goes through, like all the way up until they finally catch up to day 3. At that point, I'm on Team Abby. I was like, and then I was thinking, okay, somebody has to die at this interaction, this altercation. I think I want Abby to live versus Ellie. It's kind of nuts that they made me feel that way, but it was just such a 180.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think I found Abby's parts very slow. I was just constantly thinking, like, the longer I play as Abby, the more I'm going to become less attached to what's happened with Ellie and Jesse, and it's just taking the sting out of the occasion and the situation. But as soon as I think it was when I came back for Lev, when Yara was like really sick, and you sort of went and grabbed them and then bring them back to the aquarium. From then, I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. The part when you go to Haven is just phenomenal. When you're riding through the burning village, I mean that was just insane. The hospital was really, really great. A really, really great section. And there was another bit, the bit when you're going through that building after you fall off the bridge. That bit was one of my favorite parts of the game.
The whole thing with that crane that falls, and that's their bridge between areas. Like that was so awesome and nuts. Just how high up you are, how they show that. That was another humanizing moment for Abby too.
Yeah, and I just loved it. I loved. I found myself, because I was interested in Abby's story not from the very get go, but after an hour or so of playing, so I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. But in the back of my mind, I was always like, when can I play as Ellie again? When am I going to be able to find out what's going to happen? I want to sort of, I don't want this to take the sting out of the emotion or whatever of what's happened. But as soon as, like I said, that I think it was just before the hospital, when you head to the hospital to help Yara, that was when I was like, okay, I actually want to play this now. I want to play these parts. I want to see this out. So yeah, it was really clever the way they did that. But like I said, I just feel like I wish I didn't have to feel the negativity I felt as well. And I do definitely feel like it could have been handled a little cleaner. I think certain things could have been cut out in place of things that I'll get into later that I think would have improved the way it ended and the way it concluded. But yeah, I loved. But yeah, I'm happy to go into like those parts we said, like the hospital and the Haven and everything like that as well.
Yeah, let's do that. So when you start off as Abby, they basically introduce the same mechanics. She's able to be as nimble as Ellie. She can slide through geometry in the same way, go prone. I thought that she was a bit more actiony when you first start off as her, almost more like
she was a lot like Joel.
Yeah, and I almost got vibes of like Uncharted a bit more, where it was a bit more like just kind of not set pieces, but like the speed in which you're able to maneuver around. What was also part of that? I wanted to end her part so bad. I was running through scenes. I just wanted to be done with it. So I was also just making the game play that way because I was so just angry. I was like, just get rid of, just like run through. So I was doing that. But yeah, like when you play as her, and I think they had to make her go through these like just horrible environments so you can feel for her. So Haven, I thought was such a before that there's the issues or the interaction with the Seraphites with the scars where you're hung up. I thought that area was just gorgeous, so creepy and like nuts with the lighting, with how it's so dark and people are jumping out, or the clickers and stuff are jumping out of the forest. I loved it.
Yeah. I really like, and the bit when you're sort of in that little like abandoned shack and you're sort of waiting for them to open the door, and it was a really cool bit. And yeah, I think especially Abby's parts there were definitely a lot more horror elements. With the hospital, which
that was nuts.
Had a awesome atmosphere, awesome ambience. You're going somewhere it's definitely had the infection the longest out of any of the places you've been in the game. Going through like the quarantine like tents and things, it was really cool. And the enemy that is sort of like you can hear and you're not sure what it is, and then you finally see it.
That was so creepy.
It was a really awesome design. I loved the hospital. I thought it was mostly from a gameplay perspective, it was just such an awesome bit.
I like seeing her go back in. She's already starting to, when she has to go back for the medicine with the WLF, you're already starting to see her lie and kind of like make these small sacrifices for Lev and that group against the WLF. You're already starting to see that stuff unfold. I like that.
What I quite liked as well is like you're getting this idea that the WLF are, when you're first playing as Ellie, going back slightly to like the downtown Seattle, when you see where the WLF came in as like this rebellious group, and straight away I was thinking, this sounds like something like they would do. This sounds like something like Abby's group of people would do. Albeit they'd probably be like older than them or whatever, but this sounds like their like message. It sounds like their like rebellious nature that Abby and that have against Joel. And then it wasn't until you find out Abby was a Firefly and her father was like a really large part. I mean, obviously he was killed in that like famous moment, but he was a large part of getting the cure working. And then there's a moment, and this is what I like as well. There's a lot of subtle things in the story that if you miss, like can really like affect it. And I think it's a letter that you pick up just outside the door of the surgery room. And it says that, the Fireflies have disbanded. They're just going to have to find another group. Like that's like whether or not they believe in the group, they're just going to have to find them. So from that point, I was like, oh, so Abby isn't actually, the motives of the WLF aren't the motives of Abby and her people. They're just with the WLF because they were the option that she had when the Fireflies disbanded. And I've had like a conversation with a couple of people who were like, I found it strange how she could so easily turn against her own people, but the WLF weren't her people. They were just the faction that she joined because they were the only people that she could. And true. I think it does a good job of showing she doesn't really care for, is it Eugene, the guy? I don't think it's Eugene,
Isaac,
actually. The guy who's
like
in
the
charge.
main
Isaac.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem to really care for him or his motives, and so I think that was quite a good inclusion, because like I said, again, it's about changing my opinion on Abby. At first I think, these WLF guys, that sounds exactly down Abby's street, and then I start to find out that Abby isn't at all like the WLF. She just works for them. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, although they do kind of drive the point home, it is a family, but you're right, where it's an acquired family. Like she got used to them and built friendships there, but they didn't always have the same motives that she had. It's just kind of like they offered the best way to go about it, and they also gave her the way to train and focus on killing Joel. That was a lot of her motivation, is that she sacrificed friendships, relationships, just so she could just focus, get Jack too. She was crazy Jack, just so she could kill Joel, and it was really just because that was the best route for her to take.
And I loved that. I think it's a really cool motivation, and it made sense. And again, like there were so many parts of the end that made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel uncomfortable knowing, why she was so motivated, to kill Joel, but also being like, yeah, go on, you can do it, kind of thing. Like I was trying to suppress that, but you can't help but feel it. And I don't think Joel is a bad guy. I think in comparison to everybody else, he's just the same. He's just a survivor. But you do really sympathize with Abby, and I think her motives and backstory are so well done that it allowed us to sort of have those conflictions and uncomfortable moments. But in terms of like feeling uncomfortable as well, I suppose we can go on to when the part when you catch up to the theater as Abby, which was like one of the most uncomfortable conflictions I've ever felt in my life. Like that in terms of like the story as well, it was just that I just wasn't sure what to feel at all, and I knew that it could go one of two ways. It could and it would just ruin the game for me. But and when you come out the other end of that part, you feel like out of breath, almost like exhausted from the amount of like emotional stress you've just been through.
Yeah, so when you do arrive back, you basically have like a boss battle with Ellie, and it's such a change in the perspective, and it's cool to be on the other end of it. I thought it was very interesting. You're fighting as Abby, you have nothing. There's like bottles and stuff everywhere, but you see Ellie go through her crossbow, her knife, like all these different progressions of stuff that she has in her arsenal, and you realize like, Ellie's like super deadly. She's and you've played
planting
her
bombs and things as
Yep.
well. Yeah.
And so it's pretty nuts to be on the other side of that. But while you're fighting, I kept thinking like, I don't want to kill her. Is there an option here? But there was a lot of like cutscenes you have to play out.
Yeah, I was just cringing at even hurting Ellie because she's a character that we're also attached to, and no matter how well they were able to sell Abby, I was still Team Ellie completely. I sympathise with all of her motives completely, just because we know her so well. And I hated it. I hated when Abby's on top of her, like punching her, and you're the one that has to do it, and the part after that when it looks like she's going to kill Dina, and but I mean I think that was a really powerful moment because Abby was about to kill Dina, and it was Lev that stopped her, and I think that Lev is such a powerful device in this game because Lev sort of makes Abby realize that doing what she's doing, going on this warpath or being on this warpath has not helped, has not brought her father back. It's not made her feel better. And I suppose I can sort of talk about that as well. Is that Ellie's journey in this game is up to then is she's on this warpath of revenge, right? She's like not caring about anything. She has to kill Abby. That is, and she'll kill anyone in her way to do it. And that's what Abby was doing prior to her killing Joel. She was on that same warpath, and the difference is Abby killed Joel, but then didn't feel gratified from it. She didn't get that gratification. In fact, she said that her nightmares, she was still having nightmares about it, and that she could, and wasn't it that she could still like hear him screaming and things like that. Like it really affected her in the opposite way that she expected it to. And I think that's quite powerful to know that, skipping ahead a little bit, but to know that when Ellie doesn't kill Abby, that she hasn't done what Abby did. She hasn't, given in to that sort of last final part of that sort of like transformation into like a monster kind of thing. So I think it was like a really nice contrast of journeys. And I think even though we don't know what concludes at that point in the theatre, I think it was really cool to see Lev as well, like a young kid, change the sort of views of Abby, because Abby was ready to kill Dina. She even said something like what was it? She's like, Ellie says, "Oh, she's pregnant," and Abby says, "Good."
Yeah,
and
that's when you're like, "Oh, fuck."
Yeah, and then Lev stops her, and I think that's where Abby realizes, I need to stop doing that. I need to stop just trying to find revenge all the time, because it's not the answer. And I think it was a powerful scene for sure.
Yeah, there's multiple times where I'm yelling at the TV. One of them where Abby is like pounding Dina's head into the ground. I'm like, whoa, stop. Like, what are we doing here? And then finally Lev says something and stops her. I'm just like, fuck, man. There was a lot of moments where, or like disagreements later on with Ellie, I'm just yelling. It's like, hey, dumbass, what are you doing? A lot of just like disagreements I had with what the character is thinking, but it's, I'm on the outside looking in. There was just a like side tangent with the hospital. I just really fucking dug that whole experience. The way they made it so creepy and like foreboding, and you experience it, and it's terrifying. Like there's a lot of that was maybe one of the big themes. It's like terror because you experience that with the hospital. There's the Haven scene where it's basically hell on earth, and there's the final battle on that island, which is also hell on earth. You get to well, I guess it's the same place, and then you at the very end with Abby, that slave encampment, which is also hell on earth. It's like it's all these like terrible fucking scenes, but they're really impactful. With that hospital, it was so crazy to see that monster thing, and it was just like Resident Evil. It was just so like just took me back where I was sweaty. It was tense, like, and I was scared because this thing was because they don't do that. Like, yeah, there's horrific stuff with like these things mutating, but they don't really mutate because they did that so hard. It really hits because they don't go into the monster route really.
Yeah, and I think because it was the unknown as well, like you knew that this was a hotbed of the infection, and you know this is one of the first places it ever had been. So you knew that because you already know that the longer they're exposed to the illness, the worse they mutate and become infected with the clickers and the bloaters and things. So you just knew that there was going to be something new down here, that something that had been festering for ages. So I think that's where a lot of the tense atmosphere came from, is you being like, what on earth is in here? You see something, I can't remember exactly, but like something's ripped through like a metal door, and I think Abby even says like, what could have done that? And you just know from then, like, because I had no idea what this thing was going to look like, what it was going to do, how it was going to act. So yeah, it was a really, really great scene. And it was good because I think a lot of the time the infected take a backseat. I think in a good way. Well, not in a good way, but in a not in a bad way. So it was nice to get a proper infected sort of story kind of bit. Especially the environmental sort of storytelling is second to none in this game as well. And like I said, just having that hospital location, one of these first places where they treated this outbreak, was just really powerful and really, really cool. It was just such a great mission. But you're saying about Haven as well, with the when everything's on fire and you're just riding through and everyone's killing each other. I definitely get, I'm sure you do as well, it's probably a pretty common feeling to get through the game, is that there's this big infection. You'd hope that humanity would stand together to fight against the infected, but instead they're fighting each other. And that's something you feel throughout the game, and it's a very occurring theme that you sort of get the impression of. But when you're riding through Haven, you're just seeing all this killing, like between humans, and just this hate between them. It's really powerful because what's out there with the infected. The threat that they're again. I mean, the whole reason the world's like it is because of the infected. So for the humans still to hate each other as they do, to burn down, their villages, and to fight as they were, and to see it all so visceral and brutal, I think was a really, really powerful moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just hit home so much because of that. You're right. They're having these crazy wars when really the threat should be the clickers and the how society has fallen apart. But it's just also human nature. It seems like that we can't escape these reasons to like separate and to find issues with each other no matter what. I'm sure people can bound together for a while, and then they end up just finding issues inevitably. But I think with the Seraphites too, with them as characters, I liked them with the gameplay, the way they introduced them, the way they whistle. It was very scary because you don't know what they're saying. You don't know if you've been caught or they're just doing their normal like perimeter whistle. I love that. I love how nuts they are, how crazy they are when they actually will fight you. There's that different like it's like a kind of a beefed up Seraphite that has that kind of pickaxe thing. I loved fighting because I would find like a male one and a female one too. There's always a different character.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, and I loved the sort of mini boss fight in Haven as well, against like the big Seraphite guy, and you like slice his like mouth open.
Oh right.
And he's like, and that was a really, really cool set piece as well. That it was so creepy, the way like his cheeks were like sliced open.
Yeah, and he's still coming at you.
He just didn't want to go down. But yeah, I loved that bit. I loved that whole part when you go to the island. I thought that was just a really awesome part. Um, but yeah, and then if I remember correctly, because I'm struggling to remember some things like exactly.
Yeah, there's so much.
But after the confrontation with Ellie and Abby in the theater, that where it then does the time jump?
Yeah, so after that, you play as Ellie again, and you're in the
Yeah,
4 or 5 months later, the baby's been born, and
yeah.
you're kind of at that almost like perfect ending. How did
Mm.
you feel about playing that experience?
I liked it. I liked. I knew that Ellie was going to leave because of. I knew Ellie was going to leave. Obviously, because of Dina being pregnant, they knew that there's more important things to worry about for now. They could always go back out and go for Abby again. And obviously, with Tommy, who ends up surviving.
Yeah.
This is where the game definitely will start going downhill for me though. Up until then, I absolutely loved it, and just quickly as well, I just want to talk about the journal because you find the journal as well in that scene when you're just allowed to walk around and look for Ellie's stuff. You can find her journal, and I found that was such a impactful and visceral look into Ellie's like well-being, like what the things she wrote down, how she couldn't get Joel's eyes right. She kept like crossing out the eyes
Right.
and like drawing loads of different eyes, because that was the thing as well, was that she kept having like the flashbacks, like the part when she goes to the barn and she has like the flashback of Joel, and she said, I think she definitely mentions it, how she can only see that version of Joel when she thinks about him. She can just see this Joel with like the bit busted up head and the big swollen eye,
Yeah.
and so obviously that's why she can't draw him, because whenever she tries to think about what he looked like, that's the image she gets. So I think the journal was a really, really cool thing, and because it is her personal journal, the writers did such a good job to give you this look into something that people never should be able to look at. If someone has a personal journal, they're writing down things that the world shouldn't see. So
Right.
to be able to see that as a player for this character, it was really, really impactful, and like I said, really visceral, and like really like even violent in a way, just seeing how personal these things she was writing down were. Like it was really, really a great addition, I think. But yeah, did you sort of like the journal? Did you check it whenever it was updating
I
and
did,
things?
yeah. So I really dug, and I don't do that often where during the game, to compare to another game, like in this game, when Ellie will make her notes, you see her making her notes, she puts it away. I instantly pop it back open. Like I want to see what she's added, and yeah, every time I love to see the progression of, and she keeps like trying to draw Joel. I think like throughout the game, right, with the eyes, and she can never get it. And I never put that together till you mentioned when she flashes back and sees Joel. It's always that scene, so that makes sense of why she can't get his face right, because it's also painful to go back into those memories. No, that's a great point. Yeah, I love that journal. It was a peek into her psyche. The way she's kind of like building song lyrics too and changing them up based on what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
really good.
yeah. It was really cool, and yeah, the part that part was fine. I thought it was cool. I thought it was nice to see, Ellie and Dina, and then she has the flashback in the barn, and then that's when Tommy turns up, isn't it?
That's when Tommy turns up. I also
Yeah,
dug
and
with that flashback in the barn.
yeah,
I was hoping, and I really dug how they were trying to visualize like a panic attack and something that shuts you down. I haven't really ever experienced one, but I love how that gave me a peek into just like how it feels to, lose yourself and then you wake up, and even though it's like the stakes are high, she has her baby in her fucking hand, but she still like it overcomes her ability to function, and I really like how they built that. And then Tommy shows up. I was hoping we'll get into it, but I was hoping that this was gonna be the end for this. They were gonna leave us with, she has flashbacks, she's dealing with it, but they basically have their perfect life, and then that all gets thrown out of whack when Tommy arrives.
yeah. I think it's like I say, it's a very, very good scene. I was getting worried because when before the flashback happens, when it starts to get a bit eerie in the barn, I was like, oh no, the WLF have like found where she is, because she's killed so many of them. They've found where she is, and they've killed Dina and the baby or something. then it was a flash. So yeah, it gave me that sense of dread, like the same dread that obviously a panic attack would give you. I had that sense of dread, like, oh no, what's happening, just from the eerie ambience that happened before the flashback even started. So yeah, I think it was a very good take on that kind of sort of emotion for sure. But yeah, when Tommy comes, that I hated that bit. I think the way Tommy reacts when Ellie, says she doesn't want to go, or when Dina tries to like interject, the way Tommy reacts is just, I think it's so out of character. I just the fact that at the beginning of the game, or the nearer the start of the game, when Tommy's trying to talk Ellie out of doing it because he wants to protect her, he wants to keep her safe, and then he goes off on his own to try and do it. For him to then expect her to like do it anyway, like later on. I know he can't go now, but I can't imagine that he would put Abby's death over Ellie's safety just because he can't do it. I just thought that the way he reacted was so not the Tommy that I've got to know. I just and I don't mean in like he was having a bad day. I just think it was really poorly done. I think it really made me sort of like recoil, kind of like, what, like, why is he acting like that? It's completely not like him. So yeah, I really didn't like that bit, but I don't know if you feel any different.
I guess I had different views on it, where I didn't like how he was, but I took it more as, because he explains when he shows up, he's like, and I haven't seen him in a while, right? He explains that he broke up with his wife, I forget her name, and I think he's just on this downward spiral. And for some reason, either because he's so obsessed with getting back to Abby, and that's what caused the failure in his marriage, or other things, but like his life is just going downhill. He looks really rough. I think it was a bummer to see him like such a fall from grace. He was a somewhat positive character, although he does do all that death and damage on his own in Seattle, but he's fallen so hard. And so, yeah, it sucks when you see him bring that up again. Like, he can't let it go, even to the point where he's willing to like throw Ellie's life out of whack. I guess it's just, I took it as this whole thing has taken over in such a way of obsession, where that's where his mindset is. So nothing will satisfy him until he gets Abby, until he gets Joel's killer. So it is kind of like out of left field somewhat, or out of his character. But for me, it was justified for the fact that he's obsessed with it, and it's just kind of it's taken his life down.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's also like, because obviously you don't see Tommy again after that. I just think it just ruins his character for me. It's like I can't. I either have to be like, well, that was a bit out of character, so like I just need to sort of kind of ignore it. But if not, then now if I replay the first game, replay the second game, I'm not going to look at Tommy the same. And I just think it's a shame that they had to do that to him without either an explanation or anything like that. And yeah, I just it really rubbed me the wrong way, that scene. But yeah, and then obviously because he's heard that Abby's in Santa Barbara, and then Ellie, after sort of having a falling out with Dina over it,
I hated that, by the way.
There. Yeah.
I was just so frustrated. Like, you have this perfect life. Like, I thought they were going to end the game there. There's times where you have the baby. Dina sends you to go get the stuffed animal on the tractor, and the camera pans out. I'm like, oh, perfect. They fade to black. Last of Us. They've gone through so much. They were able to come out with their lives, and we're done here. And they keep it going. And I mean, there's constant themes of like addiction, really, with especially with Ellie. And then Abby had it too. They just can't let it go, even if it means destroying their lives.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it was frustrating to see, but I believed it as well though. Like I thought, like Ellie, this is something that's clearly played in Ellie's mind like throughout this whole thing, and her sitting in sort of such comfort probably really like gets to her as well. But yeah, and then it puts you in control of Abby again, and that actually had another negative effect on me, because I was kind of like, oh, come on, like I've just been put back in control of Ellie. Like as much as I liked Abby's bit, I was looking forward to playing as Ellie again, and now I'm playing as Abby again. But obviously that bit was quite short, and then you're Ellie again. But what did you think of the Fireflies sort of radio transmission.
I thought that was cool, but I couldn't tell for sure if that was a trick or something. I guess at the end of the day, it was. They were actually communicating with that other branch. I liked that it seemed hopeful, although at the same time, I could still think ahead and go, I know that Ellie's hot on our heels. They finally have this happiness, this like conclusion. They're going to find the Fireflies. I don't need Ellie coming up over here and fucking it up. Like, I want them to ride off into the sunset. And you see the dialogue. I love the dialogue with Abby and Lev, because Lev is like basically lived in a fucking camp in like in this weird cult rather, and so doesn't even know like concepts of like of how to joke or like sarcasm, and so it's cool to see them go back and forth and him taking everything literally. I love that, and so I was happy with these characters. And I wanted them to at least find some happiness, something, as you do with all the characters really, but that's not what happens. They get caught by this, and it seems obvious these are like slave traders, basically, or slave workers.
Yeah, so I think the Firefly transmission was real, simply because I think if that was a trap, it was like really complicated and very because if I remember correctly, Abby had to like do some work to get the radio working. She had to like do something there. She then had to go through all the different channels, and she finally found one. So I feel like that was a bit. It would have been a bit too out of the way, like a bit too, because if these rattlers see a couple of people, they're gonna have to hope that they find this secret door behind a wardrobe, then bother tampering around with this radio and then tuning into this thing. And I just don't think it. I think they probably would have just been watching them and then waiting outside the house or something.
That makes way more sense as I think about it. Yeah.
But yeah, and then Abby gets captured, obviously, and then you play as Ellie, and I mean the part with Ellie's so short that there's not really much to talk about except for the fact she gets captured as well, or gets caught in the trap, which she escapes from.
You do get that assault rifle, so it becomes way more actiony. There's way more enemies they throw at you. That part was hard. I definitely died a bunch because, and that's another thing. A lot of the levels are so vertical. So if you go back to Seattle with a lot of like the broken down buildings and multiple levels, you have all these ways where people can see you, enemies can see you, and you have to navigate. That level was a bit of that, but the levels expand so much and are so multi-layered, which makes it awesome. You have more room, but it's also more difficult because there's more lines of sight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a hard bit, and I liked the infected that you could sort of unchain as well. That was cool.
I never unchained them because I assumed they were gonna kill me. Did you use them as like a weapon?
I did the first one definitely just because I wanted to see it attack the guy who was like antagonizing it.
Right.
I used like some of the clickers, and it just causes like mayhem, which is just fun to watch. But yeah, they you end up having to like kill them anyway because for some reason, like, which is like a little bit of an issue I had, like some reason they just suck at taking down those clickers. Like there's like 20 of them and they can't take down 2 clickers, so I ended up having to kill them. But no, it was a fun bit. I'll definitely, I've got, like I said, I've got loads to talk about in terms of like the action set pieces, and because I really loved how it approached that, especially in Ellie's parts, because Ellie's parts are definitely different to Abby's in terms of her like constitution and how much damage she can take, and like the different tactics you've got to employ. But yeah, I from then on, because obviously Abby frees the prisoners, Ellie frees the prisoners, finds out Abby's not there, and then goes down to the beach, and Abby's like really malnourished and weak, and just had a haircut and everything.
And they're all like crucified, basically.
Yeah, and then Ellie lets her down, and I thought from there that they were gonna like have at least a conversation or something, but Ellie kind of like I want to say like a Sam gets Abby to like fight her, and yeah, that's an uncomfortable scene for sure. And I like how like Ellie's like set, like she it's when she's like holding the knife to Lev, and she like says to Abby, you've made him part of this, because Abby says, oh, he's nothing to do with this, and Ellie says you made him part of it. You can tell in Ellie's face that's when she realizes that she has become the thing she's trying to kill. Like she's becoming this monster that she sees Abby as, and I think that was cool. I think that was pretty obvious. Like you can tell in like her face, and then obviously when she's like trying to kill Abby, and then she stops and lets her go. Um, I thought that was, all right, and I don't know if I can remember correctly. Is that when she flashes back to that scene with Joel?
It's either. I don't think it's in between their fight. I think she's seeing more of Joel, and that's when she decides to let her go. And then after that, they show that full blown scene.
Yeah, because she sees like Joel's face or something, doesn't she? She just sees. Yeah, so I think that's like kind of like I was saying how she just keeps remembering him as this bloody busted guy. She can't remember him fondly. She can't remember she can't remember these nice images of him. So and then she finally does. And then she obviously senses some kind of closure from that, and she stops killing Abby and lets her go. What did you think of that, sort of how that scene played out?
I thought it was another moment where I'm just yelling at the TV. Like when you finally let her down, I think, okay, you've seen and you can imagine the shit that Abby and Lev have gone through. It's done. Let them go. There's 2 boats. Literally, you guys can go your separate ways. Let it go. And it seems like it's going that direction. She's throwing her bag into the boat, and then you see the flashback again. I think it's of Joel beat up, and she can't release that feeling, and so she's like, hey, we're gonna fight. And man, that was tough, because it's not only like tough because you want her to just drop it, but also Abby is just like so weak and can't fight back. I mean, she's fighting back, but it's like you're fighting an opponent that doesn't want to fight you, doesn't have the energy, and you're just beating the living shit out of them. Of course, it's so photorealistic. I'm just beating this lady. I'm just like, dude, stop. Like,
yeah, you're just like knifing like her arms, and like
they get so fucked up. And one of them, is it Ellie that gets stabbed all the way through, or Abby?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'm just like, what are we doing? And so I guess from the playing it, I didn't like that I had to do this, but I understood that once you come out of it, like that feeling of she basically hits rock bottom with like being the monster. You mentioned that she realizes it. And she finally lets her go, and like, okay, there's a sigh of relief, because it was getting real rough. I did not want to have to kill this lady, especially you're playing as Ellie too. You're the one who has to beat the shit out of Abby, and I thought, if anything, let Abby win. Like, I think at least twice I just let her beat the shit out of me, and I thought maybe I can. That's how you can decide where the story goes. You can't. You gotta finish her as Ellie.
Yeah. So because I like that bit. I think I'll get on to sort of what I think more in a minute, but I liked how that played out, and I liked how it was all about it took me like a day or so of thinking about it to realize what it meant, but when how she's always thinking of Joel beaten up, she can't draw his face because of that, and it's like, obviously it's like that's what's driving her, that's her memory of Joel, him being beat up, defenseless, like brutally hurt and broken. And then when she's about to kill Abby, she then has her first flashback of the game, or the first like imagery of the game of his just face, of his normal face, like he looks like nice, like smiling or whatever. And I think I think that's clever. I think that's well done. It makes sense. I didn't pick it up straight away, but I still understood her letting her go. But then Ellie returns home. Dean has left her. Nothing's there. All her stuff's packed up. And then she goes to play the guitar, and it plays that really amazing scene, which we'll talk about as well. And then it ends. And I was just like, but there's no conclusion. There's no, like, I don't know. I still feel it. I think the problem is, for me, there was no engagement between Abby and Ellie, as in they didn't have a conversation with each other. Ellie never found out why Abby killed Joel. She, there was just no, aside from these like vague things of Ellie getting closure and Ellie, with the flashbacks and that, it's all very vague, and I just wanted a really concrete conclusion between them, and for it to end without that bit of engagement between them, and also for it to end on such a sour note that Ellie's got home, Dean has left her. It's just so awful for Ellie. Like, it's just such an awful end, and the amount of like emotion that we've gone through up to that point, I was expecting there to be a payoff, at least, something to make it all worth it, to make everything that we've just gone through worth, the stress and the conflict and the like the emotions you felt, and it just wasn't. It was just cut so short, I thought. And I think for what I would have wanted and what I was expecting when Ellie got caught in the trap. What I was expecting to happen was that Ellie and Abby would be locked up together, and they would have to, be forced to work together to get out, because then that would allow some actual engagement between them, some actual dialogue between them, some kind of relationship between them, whether that's bad or good, but something to give you like a real concrete complexity between the two characters and how they feel with each other. But instead we just got a very vague, like arty kind of moral trying to do something in that way. And I think, I don't know, it just wasn't how I think it should have played out. I think, like I said, it didn't give me a payoff I wanted. It made me feel really unsatisfied, and for the next couple of days I felt hungover, like, because I was just like, how can it end like that? Like, I just didn't feel satisfied at all. And now, like, looking back, I definitely don't feel as like begrudged by it, but like, I have to think about my immediate thought, because that was how I felt immediately, and I felt so disappointed with the ending, and I just felt there was so much more to say. There was so much more for me to find out, whether it's to do with why Ellie's now got closure, what's happening with Dina, it just seemed so bad for Ellie. It didn't seem like she had got any kind of payoff for all of the things she had spent doing in that game. And that's just how I sort of interpreted it. So I'll be interested to see how you felt.
I understand where you're coming from with that. I guess for me, and a lot of it is us like projecting our own thoughts into and interpreting the story, right, or like the ending. But for me, I guess I see what they did with you. You didn't have that feeling of a payoff, of a conclusion, or making it worth it. And I think that they did that for a reason, because there isn't that with what Ellie went through. Like, she was willing to sacrifice everything for what? For this death that was, or like the pursuit of a death that isn't going to make her feel any better. And so after she's done all that, she's left with nothing, and she kind of has to realize that and be left with the repercussions that she gave her life up, or this happy life that she could have had with Dina, for what? For nothing. And so I think that's what I imagine that's what they wanted the player to feel as well. It's like you're left with the repercussions of what you did, and at the end of the day, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't something she should have pursued, but she had to reach the bottom, I guess, to realize that. Let's touch back on lost my train of thought. So with Ellie and Abby not having that dialogue, I guess I can understand them not having it, just because they both are in such opposite extremes. Abby killed Joel, which is like Ellie's dad, and Ellie killed Abby's dad. And so because they're so, I don't think there's any kind of dialogue they could ever have, because they literally did the worst thing to each other. So there's maybe no way they could ever work together, have a conversation. They're always going to be at ends and just like butt heads, because they're like mortal enemies. I mean, they've done the worst to each other. So the dialogue we got is like the only that I could surmise they could actually have with each other, just because such extremes happened and they were responsible for the extremes. There is that point where Ellie does say to Abby, that's right at the end of day 3, she's like, whoa, stop. Like, I'm the reason you want me. And that's when she has Tommy at gunpoint. You want me. I'm the reason why there's no cure. She does kind of explain that she understands why Abby's pursuing Joel, but she doesn't realize that she literally killed Joel, or that Joel literally killed her dad. But you're right, they don't have that exact moment. But I think for me, it was because they're so total opposites, and they've killed literally each other's dads. There's no way they can have like a sit down conversation. Maybe you mentioned if they were forced together in that slave camp, maybe that's the only way. But even then, I think you would see Abby or Ellie sulking and never talking and just waiting to stab her or something. I don't think there's ever a dialogue they could have.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. I think that's why I'd like to have seen like them maybe locked up together, and the only way they can get out is to work together. I think that's where it'd be another, like, it would fit the theme of the game up to then, because it's a very uncomfortable situation. It's, you don't really know how it's going to play out. And but I think I agree with what you're saying. I could see what you're saying for sure. And I think you're right. There isn't an emotional payoff to be had. But I just think, as someone consuming the second part to a game which I loved, of characters I loved, I just think it was kind of not disrespectful, but just a bit sour. Like, when I look, I mean, again, like, it took me a few days and now I'm not too bothered. But when I first completed it, I was like, I don't even know if I want to even play the first game ever again, because I know what happens, and I know how just completely horrible it concludes. This story ends. I don't want to even play the first game because I know how, you know, just awful it ends for these characters. And now, you know, I don't feel quite that way, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like as a standalone game, as a standalone story, I think it's great. I think the ending's fine. I think, you know, but as a part two to The Last of Us, I think that it's a bad ending because we already knew that Last of Us Part Two wasn't really something that had to be made. We already know for sure that Last of Us 3 doesn't sound like something that will be happening at all. Even before Last of Us 2 came out, they were saying, you know, this is going to be the only game. So I was expecting a conclusion to this story, but instead I was just left with like emptiness. And I just think that it's just not the right way to leave a beloved series like that. So yeah, so I think that the main, what I've been sort of saying to people who've asked me what I think is that I think it was a gameplay, again we'll get onto in a minute, but story wise I think it was an amazing story, done really really well, really clever, but as a part two to The Last of Us, I think it was not what I wanted at all. It was, yeah, that is not what I wanted from a part two to The Last of Us, basically.
Well, here's devil's advocate on that. So with The Last of Us 1, it is, when we kind of step back, it is somewhat of a complete experience. At the same time, you end it with that super ambiguous, conversation with Ellie and Joel where she asks him what happened and he tells her he lies and she says, okay. And then they end it right there. It's up to us to like imagine, man, did she believe her really? Like, what do you think the future holds? There's all those fireflies that killed her. They're going to come back. There's a lot of things they leave open, but it does, for the most part, feel concluded, right? Or at least complete, even though it's still ambiguous. And I think this one follows at some of that ambiguous nature where they do leave it open. Where's Dina? Does she go after her? What happens with Abby? I feel like you could also see that there are those same kind of through lines with this, and they leave it ambiguous and they leave it up to you. I wrestle with that too. I sometimes I'd like it, sometimes I don't, but I think overall I do like the fact that it's up to me to kind of wonder what happens with Ellie and what does she do. And I guess I got the sense that she hit rock bottom, and she, by leaving that guitar there, she was kind of finally able to let Joel go, and she leaves all her stuff there too, and she just walks away. And I get the feeling that this chapter in her life is somewhat closed, or in a sense, because she's able to walk away and trying to figure out like what does she have to live for now, because she's basically been through the ringer. She's lost Dina potentially. Does she go after Dina? I don't know. She's also super young, so Ellie's like 19, 20 at this point. I understand they have no reason to follow the story at all, but at the same time, Ellie's so young, she could find something else. She could find some kind of thing that gives her a purpose in life. And maybe if they were to go back into the story, it would be Ellie on her journey from the bottom to the top of like finding something to live for again. I wouldn't mind. I know they've mentioned in the news there's no plans for DLC, although they always say that. But I wouldn't mind a side story, just like they did with Last of Us, the first one, that DLC, the Left Behind. No combat. It's just you pursuing Dina. You meet up to her and you're just trying to convince her to like take you back. And maybe you're just dialogue, just like dumb jokes, just dealing with the baby. I would love that, because I guess I do want some closure. The more I think about it, I do want some closure with her and Dina, because that's such a perfect life that she left and possibly destroyed. But at the same time, I like that it's up to us to decide a little bit as to what happens.
Yeah. I think for me, the whole Dina and Tommy thing at the end is just insult to injury. Like, I don't mind that it left that open. It was more because The Last of Us is, for me, about Ellie and Joel. It's about that relationship. And I think, the second game, whilst Joel does die early, is still, that relationship still is the forefront of your emotions. It's still what's pulling you through. It's still what's tugging at your heartstrings. So I think what I mean more is I wanted a more concrete conclusion between. It might just be me, but because like I said, I now understand the ending a bit more and everything. But at the time, I just think it didn't need a vague, arty sort of way to show that Ellie's dealt with it now and that she's kind of looking to move on. And I know that things like death and grieving is more complex than that. But I just feel like we needed some kind of like narrative conclusion that would make you sort of make us be able to move on as well from Joel's death. Like, I don't think it gave the player any gratification from that respect, and I think that's where it makes me feel slightly sour about it. Is that I don't feel, or I don't feel like Joel's death has been. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I just don't feel like they rounded off that Joel and Ellie thing well enough for me. Which is why that's why I say, like, as a standalone game, I think the story's great. I think the way they end it's great. I think it's all fine. But just because those characters mean so much to me, I think there could have been a slightly better conclusion or just some sort of payoff that sort of, because it knows what it's put you through. And I just think as someone who's making something, you have to think about your player in that respect as well. But I also completely see where you're coming from as well, and I think it is down to personal preference, which is why, just to quickly touch on, I think the abuse that's directed to Neil Druckmann from people who don't like how it was handled is disgusting. Like, it's just,
people are idiots, man. It's like,
awful.
I don't know, you'll never get rid of it. They suck. Like, attacks on, or the character that plays Abby, I forget her name. She's a well-known voice actress, Laura Bailey. Yeah, it's like, just, you're an idiot. Don't, I guess, just like try and put out of your mind, like, these people aren't even like real. Almost don't even like take their criticism seriously.
Yeah, because it's. I saw something on Twitter which sort of made me sort of really feel sorry for him, was because I've been seeing all the abuse he's been getting, but I wasn't sure obviously like how he was taking it or whatever. And one of the illustrators for Naughty Dog had tweeted about how none of the illustrators had been forced to look at violent references, because there's been a rumor that had been going around that Naughty Dog artists were forced to look at these things. It actually turned out that this quote that people had been using was taken from a NetherRealm interview about Mortal Kombat, so it wasn't even to do with Naughty Dog.
I remember when that happened. They were vocal about how they were just like beat over the head with all this horrible stuff.
And these stupid review bombers and that sort of crowd were trying to then turn that quote against Naughty Dog. This illustrator had put where is this source from, like, and Neil Druckmann retweeted it and put probably the same source that says Abby is trans, or that I had self-inserted myself in the game. And he basically like addressed all these stupid fake things that people were spreading about the game just to try and put people off of it. Like that Neil Druckmann had mocapped himself to play as Manny just because Manny spits on Joel's corpse, and that's like a genuinely like really popular thing online. Like, people genuinely believe that. Like, and Neil Druckmann even said that we have an actor who plays him. Like it's just things like that they're just completely unacceptable, I think. And if a story doesn't go your way, don't abuse the person who wrote it, because at the end of the day, stories are interpreted differently by everybody, and it just so happens that maybe you interpreted it in a way that it didn't match your expectations or whatever. So yeah, I think it's pretty awful from that respect.
I mean, this is art we're talking about. It's like, it's going to make people feel a certain way, and it's either positive for you or negative or mixed. And the idea that, because I was also reading about some kind of petition to get them to like change the ending or change certain story beats. I'm like, hey, go fuck yourself. Like, what are you thinking? They don't owe you anything. What kind? You think like an artist, like a musician, is going to put out their album and people don't like it and then change it? No. I get that this is interactive, so people have their more of a relation to what happens, and it's super strong because of that. I get that. At the same time, it's not yours to change. You can just interpret and feel, but that's how it is. And so I can't imagine the mindset of someone who's really like signing a petition to change stuff or spreading these weird rumors. It's like, I don't know what the fuck. You got some issues in your life if you're doing that.
Because it's like, for me, like I would, like I said, I think the story did ruin the way I look at The Last of Us, like, overall. Again, as I've sat on it, it's not that deep, to be honest, but at the time it did. But not once did I, because all the people are saying, oh, Neil Druckmann's ruined The Last of Us and things like that. And that's a completely different take, because firstly, Neil Druckmann wrote the first Last of Us. So like, you wouldn't even care this much if it wasn't for him. And it's his story. He can write it however he wants. Like, he can end it how he wants. And, obviously the consumer are the ones that give him the platform to do so, but also, like, you have to accept that it's open to interpretation. Not if you don't like a story, it doesn't mean it's poorly written. It's same with like Star Wars. It's the same like with Game of Thrones. Like just because you don't like how something happened doesn't mean that, you know, these people are paid huge amounts of money because they're professional writers. Like, do you really think that you can call out bad writing? Like, I don't know. It's something that I find really irritating. And so as much as I might not agree with the story necessarily in a lot of ways, I would never abuse the writer or call him out for being a bad writer or whatever. I just think that, you know, I didn't like it personally. But I did love the gameplay.
Yeah, and those are all like fair points. You know, like I think we can all have these various views and either like it or not like it, or have a complicated view on it. You know, like when I ended, I also had like a super negative feeling of like, that's it, we're done. And then it was just more of like thinking about it, interpreting afterwards. And maybe it's not fair to apply like how you feel after to like the feeling of when it actually happens. That's a whole like side conversation of like how is the proper way to like interpret stuff. I guess there isn't a proper way. It's just, it's art, it's a feeling you get. So I get that people may not understand or like not understand, agree or like how it ends for sure. And that's also what I love. I respect highly the fact that they made these huge swings with Joel, with killing him off so early, with the ending, with playing as Abby. They took these huge swings, and there's something that I respect with them even taking the chance to do that, and they realized that we wanted to say something, and it's going to be something that's dramatically different from what we said before, and take huge chances. And I think they pulled it off, but these swings were with huge risk, and I just respect that they did that on that level.
Yeah. I even think like I said, you know, I completed it on Sunday, I think. So, you know, having like a full week to think about it and everything. I definitely don't really mind how it ended now, and I don't feel badly about the series like I did. It was definitely a fresh, raw emotion. So for me, so like right now, I will say like I liked it. I did like Last of Us 2, and I know it's kind of contradictory, but even just talking it over with you now has like made me sort of think about it. And you know, I did definitely like it, but I also can't ignore those raw feelings it made me feel as well. So I think it's important for me to understand that I didn't like the ending. You know, whether or not I like it now, it's still an important thing to sort of mention. But yeah, I think it's great. I think the writing was spot on. I think you know, it made me feel so, you know, a game can't make you feel that way if the writing's bad. You know, like I wouldn't be able to feel even disappointed with the conclusion if the writing was bad, because it had me so hooked up until then. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have a huge amount more to say about the story. So I mean, unless you want to talk about anything else in the story.
How did you feel? One of the last scenes, they show the interaction with Joel. They haven't been, and they kind of allude to, which that was one of the trailer things they showed way back in the day, but was that party scene. They had that kiss with Dina, and then you finally get to see Joel's reaction and how he stands up for Ellie. And then they have their talk at his house, and that talk was, I imagine, way long after one of their last falling outs, where Joel's honest about what he did at the hospital, and she says like, I'll go back, but we're done. And then they actually this is the first time them talking about what, and trying to like move forward with what Joel did. How did you feel about that scene?
Yeah, well, that would have been the last time Ellie spoke to Joel as well, because that was after the party, and then the game starts the morning after. So yeah, I loved it. I think it was really impactful. It was nice to know that they but this is another thing as well. I don't feel like it necessarily ended on a positive note, that conversation. I think it was a positive conversation as a whole, but it ended with Ellie saying she'll try and forgive him, kind of thing, which you know is quite neutral. But yeah, it was a really nice scene, and I loved the part when Joel says, you know, if I could do it all again, I'd do it exactly the same, and I loved that. And yeah, I thought it was a great scene.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there was a lot of moments that like really pull on my heartstrings. That was one where, especially where Joel is like really positive about Ellie's relationship with Dina, and how, I forget what he says exactly, but he's like, oh, if I don't know her intentions, but you know, it seems like she's like a good catch or whatever, or if she's interested in you.
And he says like she'd be lucky to have you or something like that.
Yeah, that one hit me, man. I was like, oh damn. There was moments in The Last of Us, the first one, and it's that same kind of feeling where, and I think it's because they withhold emotion so much within the game, and when they do finally give it to you, it just like hits you directly in the balls. Because like there's that scene with Ellie in the first one. You're trying to pawn her off to Tommy, and she doesn't want to leave, and she's like, everyone's left me except for fucking you, and she hits him on the shoulder, and that was just such a raw feeling, and it really hits hard, and so that was the same kind of feelings with this scene too.
Yeah, and I think touching on that, like I said, I think there was so many emotional scenes, but I do think the first game is still like in terms of story, I think in a league of its own, and I mean this is like a close second for sure, in terms of like game stories, because that's another conversation I've seen going as well, is people trying to compare it to film. Like you can't compare games to films, like and I've seen like that guy who compared it to Schindler's List, which was really strange
Oh
comparison
yeah,
to
I saw
make.
that there was
But
some drama online with that, right?
yeah, but you just can't, because games will never be able to, as much as I prefer to experience stories through games. I prefer game stories than movie stories. You can never tell a story with the same in the same way, in the same cinematic way as a film. You just can't. It's just not, because you have to play the game. Like so the comparison is a bit strange, and I do find people saying like, "Oh, Last of Us is like," comparing it to these movies, like these amazing cinematic movies. I just don't think. I'm not saying Last of Us is worse than them, but they're just not in the same like cinematic bubble. Like they're just not really comparable in that way, I don't think. But yeah, I think there was another. I wanted to say about another line. Oh yeah, the bit when Abby. Yeah, with Lev, when Yara gets killed by the WLF, and Lev says, it was your people that killed her," and then Abby says, "You're my people." I love that. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
that
like,
was
dude,
like
let's
really
go. You're my
awesome.
people. Let's
Yeah,
fucking let's
yeah,
fight them all. Like, yeah, I had that same feeling of, and they did such a good job, and that's what's so nuts. I have so many mixed feelings with the ending, with the story for sure, but the fact that they made you care about Abby, the fact that they pulled that off is insane. Because I when I was texting you, I was like, I fucking hate her. I don't want to play as her, and they somehow changed it to where I was on her side, and it's just it'll go down as like not like a weird character reveal. It's something different where they can actually make you do a 180 over time. It's something, and you mentioned that's something only games can do because you spend so much time with a character. Movies are so limited in their scope.
yeah. I don't know. I've got to say, like, just from talking it over, like talking and thinking, because this is the first time I've really like thought back about the game. Because I've wanted to sort of wait and talk about it, like with you, obviously, and I do think I actually am. I do think I do like it more now than I did. I think I'm struggling to actually find any real like issues I had with it. I had obviously because I had issues with it at the time because of how conflicting the game is. But after you let it settle and look back at it, I'm not sure I do have that many problems with it, to be honest. It is a remarkably well made game. I mean I definitely still feel that the first game is better in terms of its story, but yeah, I mean the second, it is a remarkable game, and I think the fact that I've had to, because I felt like literally staring at a wall for like the day after, the couple of days after I finished it, and but now that the dust has settled and I can look back at it and like talk it over, I am really starting to come around to it.
Well, that's the beauty with this type of game is that so much of it relies on the interpretation and like bouncing these ideas out loud with people. It's almost like that's where it's like I saw the same comparison with Greg Miller. I watched their kind of funny review or like Spoilercast. He's like, this is kind of its own lane. It's not a movie. It's not a game. It's not a book. It's able to do all these different things where it relies on the story so much, and it relies on people talking to each other. It's almost its own mechanic. It's like, okay, how did you feel? Here's how I felt. Or here's the reason why. The first Last of Us did that as well, with leaving the end ambiguous too. And it's so heavy on the story, and like the theme is these lives that you deal with, like personalities or like human emotions, and that transcends into how people talk about it and interpret it. It's kind of nuts. No other media or game really does that. And I understand like there's genres. I'm not looking for Gran Turismo to do the same thing. It's like there's all these different genres and lanes, and Naughty Dog has built their own lane, creating these kind of experiences where it really does rely also on how you talk about it and how you feel about it afterwards, and the feelings you feel during it. Like even though I did a 180 on Abby, I fucking hated it to the point where I almost didn't want to play it anymore. And those are feelings along the way, or the ending too. Like you mentioned, staring at the wall. I had the same feeling when I stayed up all night trying to marathon this game. That's another thing, is that I don't know how you beat this in like 3 or 4 fucking days. That's insane because it took me so fucking long to beat this. But so I marathoned in the morning and I felt like shit in the morning after. But as soon as I finished playing at like 7 a.m. That's when my wife woke up, and she woke up right when I was done playing the game, and she's just looking at me. And I'm like, "Oh, you beat it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm just, I don't, and I was also like sleep deprived
Yeah,
too, but I just didn't know
yeah.
what to feel and think. I was just like, "Gee, it's over, okay." And I just kind of like walked around. But it's just such a different experience because it relies so heavily on how you feel about the story aside from like the gameplay.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, it is. And on that note, do you want to talk briefly about the gameplay as well, to sort of, because that's another huge part of the game, which I think the game excels at. And I think before I get like really into it, I just want to talk about, Jim Sterling, the sort of I watched his impressions video on it because I know that he has a very like different perspective on his games. I only watched like the first few minutes, but I knew he'd have. I mean, I disagree with a lot of things he says, but I always like watching his videos because he makes some really good points a lot of the time. And he was saying about how like Neil Druckmann was saying that they don't like to use the word fun in Naughty Dog and things like that, and also that the moral of the story in a lot of ways was that killing's bad, basically, but the gameplay, they make it so fun to kill people, and they give you so many different ways to kill people. They give you all these upgrade paths and everything to make it as accessible as possible to kill. So it kind of contradicts in that way. And I just thought it was a good point to make, and a good point to sort of bring up about it, because it is fair enough. But I think it does show that divide sometimes between a writer and the people who make the mechanics in the game as well. I actually, that's something I know, because I didn't realize that was going to be in the game, but it's something I notice quite often is when they like say like a person's name when you see them when they see them get killed. I really like that. I thought that was really cool. And I think the main thing with the gameplay I love is that all of the way that AI is designed is that they're always doing something. Like they're always, and you can just let them do it. Like I remember really early on in the game, there's a part where these enemies attack you in this like long bit of grass, and you kill them, and you go up on this roof, and you can go prone underneath these extractor fans. And I went up there, and I just let these enemies walk past, and they found the bodies, and so they all just jumped down and were like looking, and they were all like crying out and like really distressed. So it seems like the AI is oriented on an objective that they're trying to do. That it's not, they're not there just to try and kill you. Like they're there to try and do, what they're actually there in that world to do, kind of thing, at a specific time. And I especially found that when like when you're Ellie and Dina, and you're first going through that there's like a section, I can't remember exactly when it is, but you're like going through, and there's like patrols around, and it just felt so alive. It didn't feel like there were like combat encounters placed there for you. It seemed like there were just people populating that world, and then you can react or not to however you want to. But yeah, I mean the gameplay in general is fantastic, mostly down to the presentation. Like the animations are insane. Like I said, the AI is so realistic. In terms of like you're saying, they scream out the people's names. They look for you in really realistic ways. That again, mostly down to their animations and things. And just the way it's presented just makes each combat encounter seem unique, seem real, and seem actually like dangerous. Not only for you, as in the enemies are dangerous to you, but you seem dangerous to the enemies, because there were times where like I would be hauled up in like a little house, and then I'd just keep attracting enemies towards me, and I'd just keep picking them off, and I really felt like a proper like like conniving uh killer that was just lurking in the shadows, like picking off these people. And and yeah, and I felt like when you're Ellie, that's how you have to play. You have to play that way because she's a lot weaker. She's faster, but and I'm comparing her to Abby here. She, and there was a lot of times where I'd be stealthing through a section, and there's just no way. I don't know if you found this the same, but there's no way you could either fight your way out because there's too many of them, but there's also so many of them that you can't just walk past them all stealthily. You have to find an opportunity and then just run and just sprint. And it doesn't tell you to do that. You have to discover that yourself, which I thought was really cool. But also, whenever you do that, it feels like a scripted chase scene, because you'll be running, you'll run past a door and they'll break through the door, and someone might grab you, and then it'll play out as if it's a cut, and you just don't know what's scripted and what isn't, because the game is just so meticulously designed that it's ready for any kind of encounter, for any kind of choice you make. It's just ready for anything to happen, and it just makes everything feel so alive and brutal. And yeah, I mean, sort of that's my overall sort of thoughts on the gameplay. Anyway, I just felt like it, like, using like Uncharted as another Naughty Dog game as an example. When you're in like a big set piece in Uncharted, the whole game felt like that. And yeah, I thought it was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, same. Especially with the way they've dealt with AI, I always felt like I was really hunted down when they are looking for me. They'll do things like they'll flank you. When they do find you, the humans will really do that. Yeah, same thing with just how dynamic everything was. It's all reacting to you and almost seamlessly. You don't see the breaks, the weird animations. It all just happens in front of you. I really dug the gameplay. There's a lot of comparisons to Metal Gear Solid. So at least the last one, how you're sneaking around. You can go prone. You can sneak. You can craft while you're prone. You can really just there's just so much ways to maneuver, and you feel really sneaky. And I really dug how they are able to do that and make you feel like you're really, for once, you're really hiding and maneuvering around as much as you want to. Yeah, I had the same. You mentioned like those experiences where you just have to run and they don't tell you it and you just feel it. And there was at least two times where I'm playing as Ellie with Dina. We're in Seattle on these buildings, and we're on this like narrow like outside part of the building, and there's a bloater. There's glass. They're breaking through the glass, and I was like, fuck, I just have to run. I have to go. There's another place with these humans. I think it was the Seraphites, where also just had a fucking run, and I didn't feel like cheapened. I felt like that was the only route, and it still was exciting to just get out alive. It never felt like, oh, I'm missing this experience, because they really balanced it where you just kind of can't overcome it, or you can pick off some of them but not all of them.
And they make running through it like its own exciting experience as well. And I ended up doing it a lot throughout the game, where I'd be looking at my ammo, like, oh, I'm really low on ammo. I'm probably not going to make it through. I'd see the enemies wouldn't have seen me yet, but I'd see lots of them. And like, for example, I remember there was a time when I was playing as Abby. I didn't do it as often with Abby because she was a bit more like Joel. And in the first game, you spend a lot more time just dispatching everyone stealthily and then walking past their dead bodies. Which is another reason I like this, because it makes you feel like you're outnumbered. It takes away that feeling of I'm just a single person killing hundreds of people because I'm better than them, kind of thing. But yeah, there was a moment, and there was a lot of moments like this where I was playing as Abby, and I realized it was the odds were against me. I just sprinted past, got into the next part, which was like a train carriage, and she just shuts the door, and then you hear them like running to the door and banging on the door. And obviously I could have got past it because there wasn't that many enemies. I was just happened to be low on ammo. I could have got past that part by killing them all, and then I would have gone into that carriage and they wouldn't have banged on the door, and Abby's like really desperately trying to shut it. And that's what I mean. Like it makes every single choice you make, it makes it seem like that's the choice you were meant to make. And then it like plays out like as if it's a cutscene, when it's not a cutscene. It's just the animations are that good, and they're that sophisticated, sort of when to be activated and everything, that it seems like everything you do is the perfect choice and there's a cutscene and everything. But yeah, I loved that, and yeah, it was great, and I really enjoyed running through areas because again, it just felt like a chase scene, and it was just exciting and added a whole new dimension to the stealth system in that game.
There were times with the combat or the gameplay in those situations where, or really also with exploring, there's just so much to explore. Sometimes I felt it a little bit daunting because I just didn't want to miss anything. And so there are times where, because you can go in every direction, especially when you're in Seattle, at least that you can kind of, you have your map, you can kind of write stuff off. But there's other smaller areas where they're still really deep. And it's just like, I did have that little bit of stress. It's like, I don't want to miss anything, but also I'm going to take so much time, like just looking through everything. It was a weird, because there's so much to do, it was kind of this weird stress that I had.
Sure, yeah. And yeah, I definitely agree. I get like that with most games, just like I have to like check every corner. And there was definitely towards the end, I just sort of thought, I'm just going to get through it. I'm just going to play it, search when I need resources and things. Because that's what I liked, is that the majority of the exploring was just so you could get more resources and things. And I loved that brings me on to sort of the difficulty setting as well, where you can set certain things to harder, and which I loved because I remember at the beginning I played it on moderate, and I was like, I'm finding a lot of resources. I had loads of ammo. I always had like all my things crafted, and so I thought, maybe I'll put it on a hard difficulty. But I didn't really. But I thought the game itself was hard enough, so I went in difficulty. And when I saw that, I was like, that's awesome. So I made like resources more scarce, but left everything else, and you can really like hone your experience into how you want it, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I really, really, really fucking love that. And I want that more in games. Let me decide. I understand there's an argument for like, hey, we're crafting this difficulty. We want you to feel a certain way. Go for it. There's an argument for that. I understand that, you have just like with a story, you've crafted this level of difficulty. You want the player to experience that. At the same time, kind of let me do what I want to do. Like, at least have that option as, here's the preferred way, and then you could take this route if you want to. And I loved how you could really just figure out exactly how you want the game to unfold with the resources, with your ally AI too. You could make sure that those are either better or worse. Man, I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. I think it played so much better than the first game. I mean, I don't think there's like, I think we've pretty much touched on everything in terms of like the main gameplay loop. I mean, it's not like the first one. It's not complex. It's not necessarily innovative in the gameplay. It's the presentation that just brings it all up to another level. Like we're saying with the animation. I mean, having to stealth past people isn't innovative. Having to even like sprint past people isn't necessarily innovative. It's the way it makes you feel like every choice you make is the right one, and because sometimes in some games you might run past, but like you said, it might make you feel like you rushed past it and you shouldn't have done that, because there's no way of your character in the game acting like that's what she wanted to do. Whereas when I was Abby and I ran past these people knowing full well that wasn't necessarily the main choice, when I got into that carriage and she's like strenuously trying to shut this door because she knows they're chasing her, like it made me feel like, oh, that is a viable option then. Like, and it's just that attention to detail that I think amplifies the gameplay. And I don't know if you agree, but I think that's what actually makes it stand out more so from the first game's gameplay, is the level of detail in the animations and the presentation, mostly.
Yeah, I mean, that level of detail just fully immerses you in the game. You don't see the normal seams or connection points that you'd see with other games, with how animations work, or when a level transitions into something else, or a cutscene. It all just kind of flows together in a way where you just stay fully involved with it. I thought the world was absolutely gorgeous. It felt like I was playing a next gen game. Like, I kept being pushed backwards. Like, whoa, like the way they've done Seattle and the other areas are just so nuts. With the water effects are really dope, and the crazy textures. I mean, there's one point I think I was this is when I was Abby in Seattle. I'm in this hotel looking area, and I'm just with my scope. I just start staring at a bed, and the cloth count on the sheets on the bed was insane. It doesn't need to be that high, and maybe it's dynamically scaling when I'm in that room or whatever when I'm zooming in. But it's like, it doesn't need to be a high. It is, and that's dope. It's just little things like that, or areas that you'll never see, or possibly the player won't see, that are fully realized, and they're just there, and you can miss it. You can. That reminds me, there's scenes in the game where you can fully miss these dialogue scenes that are just like the first time you play. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a rendition of a song. I don't know if you got to play that. It's Ellie playing for Dina in Seattle. I think you go to a record store or coffee shop.
Mad World. Yeah.
You
no,
can
not
miss,
Mad World. Take on Me.
Take on Me. Yeah, by a hot. Like, you can miss that if you don't, and that's something that was animated and voice acted, and you just It's optional to miss
And
it.
I think you touched on a good point, which is another point Jim Sterling had made, where you said, this didn't need to be that detailed, and this is a good point he made about things like the weapon upgrade system. That didn't need to be that. I liked it. I thought it was cool, but that didn't need to be like that. I'd be more than happy having a UI based upgrade system for my weapons or anything. Because can you imagine the amount of work that must have gone into that? And the amount of times this game was delayed because it needed more work done to it, the amount of crunch that went into it. That's where it you kind of can't help but think, like if they're just not done this thing that doesn't really add anything to the game other than it's like the first time you do it, you're like, oh, um, do they really need to have that much perfection kind of thing? I think what we just talked about in terms of like the AI and the enemies and the way they animate and the amount of detail in them is good because it actually enhances the gameplay. Like we're saying, the gameplay is not necessarily innovative, but the attention to detail brings it up into a league of its own. But yeah, I think there are certainly areas where it wasn't necessary to have that much detail. I think sometimes it needs to sit back and remember it's a game as well. Because I don't know about you, but there were times when I'd be upgrading my weapons and I'd actually just be like, I wish that this was cool the first time, but now it's actually kind of taking a long time and like I don't really want it to be here. So I think that's definitely something worth thinking about as well. Is there such thing as too much attention to detail, especially when that detail has to be brought to life by the people who are working on that game?
No, I mean, it's a great point. It's a fair point. With the level of detail, you could also argue though that it's like how they did one thing, they did everything. So as soon as they start cutting corners, like, oh, we don't really need to flesh out this because it's such a minor thing and blah blah blah. Then they could have extrapolate that for the entire experience. They decided to go, everything is going to have like the painstaking detail, and yeah, that possibly a product that was crunch was extending the time. But then you get this fully realized world that has all this stuff. So I don't know. I go back and forth on, do we need it? Do we not? With that animation that would play out when you're upgrading your guns, I actually really dug that. I didn't like how later in the game I just wanted to get in and out, but I dug how complex it was. Even when you're like adjusting your every upgrade you did was like a realistic upgrade. So you notice when you have your handgun, you can add these attachments to it. You can add something on the barrel. She's like cleaning it and modifying it. I feel like she's really doing something. And they're based on like real world modifications you can buy in real life. I loved how detailed that was. At the same time, yeah, I get it where it's like later in the game, I just want to get in and out. It's very much like Red Dead 2. There was a lot of painstaking detail into Red Dead 2, so much so that it would kind of pull you out of the game. This had not as much of that, but I could definitely see the points where they were following that same line.
Yeah, because I just think like I think it's great. I mean, it's obviously a good thing and it's awesome, but I think it's kind of in a way unethical because we already know that Naughty Dog have got quite a bad crunch culture, and obviously the game was delayed for extra polish and when games are delayed, obviously they have even tighter deadlines and more crunch, and it's just things like that seem unethical because especially when there should never be something in a game, obviously there always will be, but there should never be something where you think, oh, I don't really like, I wish this wasn't in it anymore. And for something that detailed, and obviously that would have taken so long to animate and do to that level of detail, it's a shame that it was there in the first place, kind of thing. Because that if that wasn't in the game, my opinion on the game wouldn't change in any way. Like I wouldn't like the game any less or any more. So I think that's where they need to they need to kind of think about the player and what's important to the player, and not just because I know that Naughty Dog strive for perfection and everything, but I think that kind of objective, like that kind of strive, is causing people to have to crunch and people to have to, because people were disgruntled at Naughty Dog, and this is the kind of thing that's causing that, is that strive for perfection. So I think they need to kind of evaluate whether it's even worth going to that level, because like we just said, we wouldn't like the game any less if that wasn't in there. So I think there needs to be some kind of leeway, because these are real people who are working on these things, and if not having that one thing in meant that there would have been less people suffering like mentally or whatever from the amount of work they have to do, then that's obviously the better option to not include it. And that's the kind of thing that can easily be found from like testing the game. I'm sure people who are like constantly playing it, they could easily think, oh, does this really need to be in there? And they can use what we just use, saying if that wasn't in there, I wouldn't have thought of the game any differently. I think it's like when you're editing a story, isn't it? It's like they say, take out everything that doesn't progress the story. It's there has to be that kind of look at a game as well. Like, do we really need this mechanic? Like, this is going to add so much more man hours to the project and things like that. So I think that's definitely something to consider. And I know it's kind of like a downer because it's a good thing, but I think it's something that we do have to think about as well in a culture of like crunch and things.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point, and it's a weird, hard conversation for them, and they need to deal with it. How much detail is worth, pouring into these games? I wonder if, and it's something that it's so weird because as players, even at a lot of games media, they're on the outside of these dev teams, and we see it a little bit more and more every year, but there's not a lot of revealing from within these dev teams of what actually goes on. Like, what is a crunch culture? What does it look like? We're getting more of it. But I wonder if a lot of these people that work at places like Naughty Dog, they're also like super invested in getting the detail. They're proud of the detail. They're proud of pouring the time. And that's not to say that like it explains or justifies it at all. But I wonder if there's a lot of that going on, and that pushes it forward too. You have people that want to get the best experience possible.
Yeah.
Just dropped my mouse. But then you have people mixed in there. It's like, hey, I want to go home and like see my kid at some point. Yeah. And they're like,
but I think that's the thing. It's a culture, isn't it? It's a
right.
crunch culture of people who want to strive for perfection. They want to. I mean, I'm sure if I worked for a games company, I'd want to spend hours and hours of overtime. But like you said, that then makes people feel guilty for not doing it. And that's where the problem is. It's creating a culture around crunch, and by making the executive decision to be like, no, we don't need to do that. That's what will help sort of eliminate it, or at least start to. But yeah, it's definitely, especially with a game like this, it's definitely something that needs to be thought about, because as much as I love the amount of detail that went in, you do have to think this was made by people who have had to crunch their asses off for it. So as much as it is like a really like negative perspective to look at it, I think it's something that deserves sort of the spotlight as well.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and we're getting more of that going forward. And it's kind of an old school way of looking at it, of just it's definitely old school of like just throwing people at the problem and they'll deal with it. I like that it's more of the conversation is like, okay, how stressed is your team? We have to keep that in perspective, and I don't care if the end result is this absolute masterpiece. It's not achieved without also the issues of what did your team go through. And we might be seeing the last of these experiences where, say with like The Last of Us 2, you can try and separate them. You can't anymore, because it's really what stress did your team go through, what sacrifices, and is it worth it in the end? Yeah, it's tough to say without having that inside knowledge. And I want to see more of that, like revealing of the perspective of the teams, and also being like, for them to feel safe talking about it, because that's this whole issue with games with developers rather unionizing, is getting that safety and being able to talk about what they're experiencing. But we'll see what happens in the future with that.
Yeah. I'm really sorry, but in England it's 7 p.m. and I believe my dinner is ready.
Well, yeah, no problem.
I mean, I don't mind. I can always put it in the microwave, but just in case you've got like some closing sort of thoughts.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. No, for sure. I think we've touched on everything. We've beat it to death. The same detail that Naughty Dog puts in their games, we put into this review.
We're crunching out here on our opinions.
And that's the thing, I guess, to close it up. I love the idea of these numbered reviews kind of leaving. With games like this, I think you have to talk about it. There's so much nuance.
Yeah.
You have to like explain these feelings that are like back and forth and up and down and all happening at the same time. Yeah. It's a number can't quantify like how you feel with this kind of game.
And just by reflecting back on the game, like here, this is the first time I've like talked about it. Like I've like typed about it, but this is the first time I've talked about it in detail, the story, remembered things, and re-gone over those things. And it's definitely changed my opinion on the game. Like just me thinking about the game again. And I think that's paramount to the complexity of the game, of the story and everything. But yeah, like you said, numbered scores. If I was to give it a numbered score, I mean, I'm not even going to attempt to, but if I was to give it a numbered score when I finished it, I would give it a completely different score now, thinking back on it. So yeah, you're right. They just shouldn't. They're just not really constructive at all.
I'd give it a 420 if I could for that one scene that's in there.
Yeah, with your green background as well.
Right.
Oh wait, it won't be green for people watching, will it?
It won't. I'll be cruising my Lamborghini, my real life Lamborghini that I own. Yeah. It's a beautiful game, masterpiece. I mean, it's just you really have to talk about it to kind of quantify like what the experience was. But yeah, we'll end it there, Callum.
Yeah.
You can find us online at Twitter, Plastic Heart Pod. Callum, they can keep up with you at Callum or Bear Monroe on Twitter as well.
Bear Monroe, yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll see everyone later next week. That's it. Bye bye.
Yeah. See you later.
You're too late. I've already summoned meteor.
Okay, let's go.